Please listen carefully.
Hello, universe, and welcome to the Optimist Daily Update. I'm Kristy Jansen.
And I'm Summers McKay.
We are part of the team behind the Optimist Daily, making solutions the news. We bring you reader-funded solutions news every day in order to change the tenor of news media, social media, and the direction of your day to one focused on solutions.
7 days a week, we publish positive news stories written by award-winning journalists and delivered online to your inbox and through our social channels. Although this week we're not actually going to do 7. Well,
I'm taking a light week.
Anyway, yeah, exactly. But also, we are sharing these solutions in a commute-worthy, walk-worthy, home office-worthy podcast, which I know everyone really looks forward to. Today is Monday, the 21st of December, 2020. Hey, Kristy, it's winter.
It is. And you know what I'm super excited about tonight?
What?
I'm going to go look at Saturn and Jupiter getting super close and kissing in the sky.
Right. Isn't it basically like it hasn't occurred in 628 years? It's something
800 years.
How many years?
800 years since 1226.
Ah. It's supposed to be like the North Star, right? Is that kind of what...
They're saying that it's kind of like the Star of Bethlehem, but they don't think that that's really true. But I don't really know.
It's just a lovely story.
I don't know what it'll be like, and I don't want to have any expectations. I just want to go out and experience the sun. It's a good excuse to go watch the sunset and sit outside a little bit and just be in nature. And our shore here in Santa Barbara is actually south facing. So I can just go to the beach and watch it, and then I'll be able to see the stars right there. So, because you look at southwest, and then you'll see the stars.
That is a lovely thing to look forward to today. I am likewise in a good mood, simply because now we start the march toward longer days, because getting up at 5:30 a.m. with a toddler is so dark, and I am so ready for bright mornings again. Whenever we get to the darkest day of the year, all I can think about is that the lightest day is what comes next. So yeah. I'm excited about that. How'd your weekend go? Anything interesting happen? Did you have a big party? Dozens of people over?
Yeah, no, that didn't happen. We watched some things on Netflix. and we also got Disney Plus.
Oh, you did? Did you? You broke down and finally we got Disney Plus, I think, like week 1 of this pandemic.
Yeah. This is the darkest time of the year, the darkest time of one of the darker years. So I'm just, getting cozy. I've been drinking eggnog. And I baked cookies.
Baking and eggnogging your way through. I love it. Well, it is 85 degrees here, or going to be 85 degrees here today. So I'm sorry to everyone who lives in a cold environment, but this morning I was sort of trying to sort out, and all weekend I actually spent the weekend dealing in my garden and trying to make it a good play space and outdoor space. So I did what I love most, which is getting deep into dirt and soil. And I made a little mud kitchen for Brennan, and she got filthy, and we just had so much fun playing in the mud all weekend. So it's going to be a good Christmas week ahead.
And we have something fun for today, don't we?
We do. We have a very fun kickoff to this Christmas week. We have an interview with an extraordinary woman who has created a social media platform and publishing entity called Uplifting Content. Her name is Ione Butler. And Kristy, you found Ione for us. Tell us a little bit about how you found her and why we're so excited to have her on.
Well, as you all know, I'm a podcast addict. And so I listen to podcasts when I'm doing almost anything. And I happened to listen to a podcast that was featuring Ione and talking about her new book called Uplifting Stories, which I immediately bought. And I just read this and I was like, we have to reach out to this woman. She's in a similar space to what we're doing. Her whole mission is to help shift the narratives in the world, because when you read things that are negative, when you see things that are negative, it's really hard to keep your own personal sense of positivity. And she's interested in helping to spotlight on those stories that are inspirational. Ione, welcome. Welcome to the Optimist Daily Update.
Thank you so much.
You're here today.
I'm really happy to be here, and thank you for this beautiful podcast, doing good things. It's lovely to be here.
And why don't you tell us a little bit about Uplifting Content and about what brought you into this whole conversation.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm from London, born and raised, and England is very different. I live in California, in LA right now. And for anyone that's spent a lot of time in England, or English people will know this, we're quite miserable as a people. It's grey and rainy and depressing. And growing up, I was just a very depressed child, young woman, felt very lonely, just very, very unhappy. And I didn't understand it. I didn't understand what it was when I was really young, but I would go through these phases where I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't care. Sometimes I felt suicidal, and I just wanted to not feel that way. And I would try to find inspiring movies or TV shows. And this was, before Google and YouTube and stuff. Would try to find stuff that would shift me out of these horrible places. And it was difficult. I struggled. And then coming into my 20s, when I was thinking about moving to LA, I got into personal development. And that helped me to kind of find ways to deal with my mind and depression and all the stuff that was going on. And I started to become happier. Moved to LA, where the sun shines every day and people smile and greet you, and there's hope, which is not really in England. It's just so miserable it can be. And that kind of elevated me. And then I moved out here for acting and voiceover and things like that. And in 2016, I just wanted to do something that mattered, that I had control of, versus hoping to be cast in a TV show or something. And so I started Uplifting Content, and the idea of it is just some real estate on social media, on the internet, where we just post things that inspire and uplift people. So whether that's inspirational quotes or memes, that's one thing. But also this idea that I strongly believe that there are more good people in the world who love, who have compassion, who want to help, who care, who do things for others, than there are awful people doing awful things. But we very rarely hear about the good things that are happening. And it's such a weird thing for me that news can be so one-sided. And I remember thinking, God, what's the world coming to? People are awful. And I was like, no, that's not the truth.
Yeah.
It's just, we're just getting one side. So, and I'm not saying ignore the things, bad things, bury your head in the sand, pretend they don't exist, but it's like balance it and look for the incredible things. Because I feel like when you hear about people doing good, when you hear about remarkable people, interviewing the people I did for my book I just felt so good and inspired by the brilliance and the generosity and the kindness and the love of all these people that I interviewed. And I feel like when you put your attention on that, it makes us a better person. It gives us the motivation, even if you don't have to start a charity, for example, but you just take some of that and put that into your lives. And I feel like if we just had saw more of a loving narrative around on a daily basis, as much as we see the horrible things, it has the potential just to flip the planet, just really elevate.
And that aligns so closely with the Optimist Daily's mission. And we like to say that there's more solutions than there are problems. It's just you never hear about them. The focus is all on what's wrong. But for every problem, there's 10 people who are working on solutions around that same problem. But it takes time. It's hard work. Yeah. And it doesn't grab you by the short and curlies, right? It doesn't.
And flipping the narrative and flipping the conversation, there's also kind of science behind it, right, Ione? And you've spoken to a lot of experts about this. What have you learned about basically the science and the power of positive storytelling and the power of flipping that switch?
Well, a couple of things I want to touch on. One is I love what you guys do with your podcast for finding the solutions, because one of the things that I struggled with was watching the news, and the news just being I just felt so defeated. It's like, here's a bunch of awful things. Good night. It's so horrible.
Exactly.
And so,
sleep tight.
Exactly. Yeah, it's awful. And so I really value what you're doing, because I think that's all it takes, just to say, this is what's happening. This is what people are doing. This is what you could do. There are solutions, let's solve these rather than just be inundated with all the horrors. But back to what you were saying about the science, the news, for example, is incredibly destructive for our mindset. They've done studies about it. It makes us feel like our problems are bigger than they are. It makes us feel like, again, the world is all doom and gloom. One of the main catalysts that started this was years ago, and I don't even know what the study was. I can't remember if I read it or watched it. but it stuck with me, and it was one of the driving factors for uplifting content. And they were saying that they would show people like either footage or tell them stories of people doing generous acts and generous things. And it would make people give more and do more generous things just by default, because you watch someone
That
be really good.
waterfall effect, right? That waterfall.
Yes.
Yeah.
You watch people be good and you're like, I'm a good person. And I know, of course, I would give more. I give more. And they did all these, and it was just very interesting how they found that correlation. And so my sort of goal, I don't like telling people what to do. I joke around with all my friends. If anyone says, can you make me a cup of tea? Don't tell me what to do. So it's just a joke. I don't like telling people what to do, but I do like sharing these things as a way of like, this is humanity, you know, this is something that we're all capable of doing. Yeah, it's kind of like a sly way of just planting those ideas of like, yep, you can impact someone's life in incredible ways and do incredible things, and you matter and all this good stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think we've talked a lot on the podcast, and also, like, for example, with other authors, about how emotions are contagious. And so what you're talking about is sort of the emotional contagion of positivity and of being inspirational, and, you know, embodying that personal power that each of us has the opportunity to make a difference in our own lives, even if it's a small difference. It's do we want to move forward or sit and stew in all the terrifying, horrible things that are out there?
That's a really great point about emotions being contagious, because the negative ones can be so easily spread. You know, we're so I feel like a puppet sometimes. You know, somebody can say something really nice to me. And I was having this conversation with a girlfriend recently. Somebody had commented her. She was dressed pretty casually, but she's very stylish, one of my girlfriends. And someone just in a store had said, oh, you're incredibly stylish or whatever. And it just brightened her whole day, and she felt really good. And I was like, isn't that interesting? Because this is something that I've thought of a lot. It's so easy for something people can say to us can shift our whole mood. And so that was nice that the woman had said something nice, but you can walk past somebody that just, you know, seems to be giving you a dirty look, and then your whole day is ruined, or they say something nasty. It's an interesting idea, because on one hand, I'm all for just brightening people's day and doing whatever you can, however small, just to lift people's moods, but also for us collectively to acknowledge that we need to control our own emotions and not be so manipulated by a smile or an insult, and still find that peace and that contentment in ourselves, regardless of what other people say. But, you know, we're not all the Dalai Lama yet. So continue to go out and be kind and spread goodness. But it's just an interesting idea.
So speaking of being kind and spreading goodness, you were so generous to allow us to publish a chapter and a story from your book yesterday for our Optimist View, which we send to our emissaries. But will you tell us a little bit more about this beautiful book that you've published and some of the stories that have inspired you most out of it?
Yes, totally. Thank you for sharing it. I hope people enjoy the sample.
It was a very widely read, widely opened, widely shared email. I'm already looking at analytics because that's what I do. I'm the numbers nerd here. And a lot of people loved it. So thank you.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah, Destiny is incredible. I'd actually heard of her a few years prior. I'd heard about the work that she'd done and just thought, what an amazing young woman. And so it was really great when I got to speak to her and find kind of the inner workings of what she'd accomplished. But the idea for the book came about because the platform Uplifting Content was very much a social media platform. And unlike you ladies who have, it's a business, I'm sure you've got like a business plan, there's a model, you kind of know where you're going. I just started this Facebook page and was just doing it, and it wasn't profitable in any way. But I mean, it was slightly, but then Facebook changed their algorithms, and then it made it really difficult to reach the audience that I'd grown.
We have exactly that challenge, right? Facebook literally just changed our algorithms, and they actually stopped allowing us to run advertisements. So we have, our entire business model has been a bit rocked. Our business has done very well during this pandemic, but unfortunately, come November, right around about 2 weeks prior to the election, until even this day, we cannot run any real ads. And it's been really challenging, and a very strange decision that Facebook would lump us in to negative news media. But anyway, just adding to that, yes, the Facebook algorithms sort of, they make you have to rethink your entire business model. Is that where?
Yes. Well, yeah, because I had to kind of think, how else do I reach people? And so this idea of just diversifying and creating a book came about. And, like it was back to that whole kind of idea about just championing people and sharing stories about remarkable people and how that it gives us the confidence and it makes us, I don't know, it just totally made me realize I can do so much. Or even if I just do small things, we just have the potential to make a difference and make an impact. And so it was interesting with the book, everything else online that I'd done previously, things go up. There's, everything, there's just a constant stream of stuff that goes out online all the time. But with this, it was 2 years from the idea to the book proposal, to getting the agent, to getting the book deal, to doing all the interviews, to getting the book written and the editing. And then COVID hit and then it was delayed coming out. So this huge process, it was just nice to invest that time and love and energy into something. It was very different. But you ask which of the stories, are inspiring. And honestly, every single one, I just felt so much love. I would get emotional doing the interviews for the book because I just kept thinking, this has so much power to positively impact people. The stories in the book are so varied. One is about a young man coming out. One is about a young woman who shut down a trash incinerator that they were going to build next to her school, which would have, been even more devastating to an already polluted town. A woman in San Francisco who started a company converting old public buses into portable showers to take around to allow homeless people to have showers and help restore their dignity. A man who was obsessed with cycling. His mission in life was to cycle 1 million miles in his lifetime. And a few years ago, he was in an accident where he fell off his bike and fell on his neck and was paralyzed from the waist down. How he is overcoming that. And, he's found a new way to continue by doing hand cycling. And one incredible young woman from England who was raped while in France a few years back, and how the lessons that she's learned from that and how she is helping other rape victims through the ordeal and the things that she's doing. And what I love about the book is you don't necessarily have had to have experienced any of those things, but you can relate. We can all relate to the lesson and the journey and like the feelings and the insecurity or the fears and the doubts and the worry. We can all get that. And then in style of your podcast, at the end of every story, there's like an exercise or an action to like implement it. So it's kind of like a solution, not really a solution, but it's like
it's a tactical way of being an optimist, of being uplifted.
It's the tools. And I think the stories are very human. And what you're tapping into is sort of all of these human emotions, which are, there's the challenges, but then there's the overcoming those challenges. And then there's that's the inspirational thing, which I really loved. And I just want to get in a little bit to some of your personal story, because one of the things you've been really generous about and vulnerable in is talking about your personal mental health challenges and the ways that even brought you into this by, like, you were self-aware enough to know that when you were down and you watched some movie that lifted you up, it changed your mood and your outlook. And I just think that's such a valuable thing that you're talking about, because having that open dialogue about your mental health situation can also really bring people into the conversation. And so I don't know how you've been doing with this pandemic, but I'm curious about how you've brought that in to this world that we're living in right now, because I know that I personally have struggled on and off with this and just being separated from the normal parts of my life that I was used to. I'm wondering what your tactics for that have been.
Yeah, so it's been a journey of understanding what was going on with me and what it was. I just remember being young. This is before, there wasn't really conversations. There wasn't a lot of internet and stuff like that. But I just remember being sad a lot. And I remember going to the doctors one time and just saying, I want some antidepressants because I just don't want to feel this. I just don't want to feel this way anymore. Like, I'm just tired of being sad. That was kind of, and I knew that antidepressants was a way of dealing with it. I ended up being on them and really didn't like them. I felt numb. It was just very weird. But when I kind of started to go down this personal development path, and sometimes people say, oh, you've cured your depression or you've moved on. And it's never really, it doesn't just disappear. I feel like it's, it comes and goes in waves. And I've got better at identifying when I'm starting to feel that way and I know what the triggers are, and I have my I go into radical self-care mode, which is what I like to call it. And then I start implementing the things that I know help me kind of ride that storm or ride that wave. And so when it was
What is radical self-care?
Yeah, so there's tons of things, well, not tons of things, there's a few things that I always do. It will be reaching out to people and not disconnecting. So connecting with loved ones, being around people, even just sometimes just saying, I'm feeling really low. Sometimes that's just enough to vocalize it. And I was supposed to do something with a bunch of friends for like an online thing for my birthday, but I was really upset and stressed out and I had to go and film something the next day. So I just messaged the group to say, I'm in a really low place. I don't have the energy to do this. I'm going to go to bed and wake up in a better mood tomorrow, but love you all, whatever. Put it out there. And I was like, don't worry about me. It's not about being worried about me. This is where I'm at. And sometimes just saying it makes me feel much better. And then
acknowledge the feelings don't fix the feelings.
Exactly. So yeah, either just vocalizing it, being around people, not isolating myself. And being in nature is incredibly healing for me. Just disconnecting, the devices off, being in nature, even if it's just going for a walk. I ideally like to be more immersed, but just do whatever you can. Exercise is another one. People say you are what you eat. I like to say you are what you consume, because it's not just what you eat, it's what you look at, it's what you watch, it's what you read, it's what you hear, it's what you're putting on your body, into your body. We're organic beings that what you consume has some kind of impact. So I say, look at what you're watching. If you're watching horror movies or, listening to a bunch of negative news incessantly, that's going to impact your mood. So just get rid of all the stuff that is doing that and just ingest goodness.
I love that. I love that. Ingesting goodness. I think that's perfect. I love that.
Just do it. Yeah. So yeah, that's just a few of them for the radical self-care stuff. And it came from just this journey of personal development and also a huge one is just being kind to yourself and recognizing the big turning point for me is when I started to identify from my thoughts, because prior to this growth and this work that I'd done, my mind was horrible. It would say horrible things to me. You're ugly, you're going to die alone, no one's going to love you, you're a failure. Like, it was incessant, and no wonder I was depressed. But I read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and it really, for the first time, made me understand that my thoughts are not true, that they are things that I can control. And rather than say these horrible, nasty things to myself incessantly, I could replace it with kind, loving things and instantly feel 1,000 times better. So that was a huge shift too.
Absolutely. And so back to Kristy's question, which I railroaded you on during this pandemic, what have your tactics been?
Yes. One thing that was very helpful is I got in a relationship with my friend and neighbor. And so that was just having companionship was really lovely. Someone to be with, because I'm very social. I'm an extrovert. I need to be around people. It's ridiculous. And so that was huge. We would go off and do whenever things lifted. I mean, I feel like we've been in a perpetual state of lockdown in LA. So I've never sort of gone out to bars and been going to restaurants and stuff. But when things eased up, we've gone on road trips to national parks or done the van life thing and gone to Lake Tahoe. And we just got back from Joshua Tree, went to Joshua Tree for a day. And so getting out in nature has been really helpful. And interestingly, just this idea of, I've been very fortunate because a lot of my work is online and like voiceover, and I create content from home. So none of that has changed. So that was very lucky. And I just decided that normally I'm flitting around everywhere. I travel all the time. I like to be going somewhere. I can't sit still. And so I thought that would be a real struggle. But I just switched my attention and my focus on the goal of working as hard as I can, saving money because there's nothing to do anyway. And I'm buying a home in the new year, which is something that I've wanted to do all my life. And I'm finally in a position to do that. And so when I gave myself an objective, a goal, it made just sitting in, I do voiceover. So I sit in my vocal booth, for hours a day, just reading audiobooks or whatever. And it made doing that work easier because I had my why, I'm going to have a home in New Mexico or Austin or somewhere, wherever I decide in a few months. And so that really helped.
That's beautiful, Ione. I like that. And just setting a goal and working towards it. that was something that I found in this, is that because I totally identify with you in loving to be near people and kind of being on the go and sort of having that desire to get out and see the world and see new people, and this pandemic has sort of shut all of that down. But there's a gift in being, in taking that pause and being still and coming to appreciate that and see what the opportunity in that moment is. I feel like has really shifted how when we can go out into the world, I like to have this space.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I'm very grateful for it, just to show me that this is what you can do when you stay still. And I've still had a lovely time. It's still not been, I've been very fortunate not to have suffered financially or lost anyone close to me. And so, for people that had that, it's very different. But I feel very fortunate. It's been,
I think a lot of people, and in a way, this sounds like survivor's guilt, right? That we're afraid to have gratitude for the fact that we've gotten through. And I think that as we sort of break apart the notion of survivor's guilt, and I lost a sibling when I was younger, so I've done a lot of work on survivor's guilt and understanding. What I hear from a lot of people who have returned to family, returned to friends, returned in ways of closeness and self-care and self-reflection during this pandemic is that they feel a bit guilty about the fact that they have not struggled dramatically. But I think it's really important for us to remember that there are so many of us who have grown during this time, and that we are coming out of this different people than we were before. And while we haven't, perhaps, those of us who are not frontline healthcare workers, those of us who have not lost family members or, known anyone personally traumatically afflicted, that doesn't mean we haven't evolved and changed through this. Right. And part of surviving this pandemic for all of us is that we are coming out with new solutions, with new focuses, and with new uplifting intentions. And I think that it just kind of beautifully brings it together, is recognizing that it is actually totally okay for everyone who has not had a terrible experience during COVID, but instead has had a growing experience, to acknowledge that and take us with.
I totally agree with you. And it's interesting because I feel like I feel like it's insensitive to say it's been a blessing, or, I mean, yes, that's true for me,
right?
But you're right. It's this weird thing, and it
feels insensitive. And Kristy and I have talked about this, and it's kind of one of these sort of, I guess, like the dirty secret of those of us who have pandemic life, right? That it feels insensitive to say, but I will say that the last 9 months of my life, I cannot imagine it any differently, simply because I was returned home. I was literally sent home and told, nope, you can't have childcare. Go hang out with your toddler, figure out how to be CEO and grow a business. And that's terrifying. And it was the most beautiful time as a mother, as a CEO, as a partner with Kristy that I could have imagined. So I am comfortable saying that I am so grateful for what this pandemic has taught me. And I think that that's something that we can all, as we close out this year and move into the next, is have gratitude for what the experiences teach you, know?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Kristy, is it time?
I think it's time for us to end. So, Ione, as we always like to finish with our guests, we always like to ask you, what is the thing that's making you optimistic? Where are you being inspired right now, today, this month, whatever time frame you like to use? But what is it that lifts you up that you want to talk about on today's pod to end today?
Yeah, I would say doing this podcast and being here with you today, because one of the things that I had a podcast that I haven't done it all this year, but I was doing it consistently for about 3 years. And we did like an Uplifting Content Summit where we interviewed a bunch of people, really incredible people for the summit. Doing this work and being in this space and learning about other people that are also doing the work and being in the space, it brings me so much hope that, I feel like it's a tidal wave of us, of all of us, just like, no, we believe that things can be better. We want to help make things better. And so it's just kind of having these conversations and learning about women like you who have got that same idea. That to me makes me so hopeful. And I just think, for anybody listening that might be inspired, just what is a small thing that you can do as your gift, and some of the exercises in Uplifting Stories are as small as just acknowledging and smiling somebody who's homeless on the street, because you're just showing them that you see them as a human being and they're there. So, it doesn't have to be starting a podcast, but just this idea that I'm hopeful that there are enough people who want things to be better and want to do good. And that warms my heart.
I love that, Ione. And I like to say, and I'll share this with you, I like to say that we're media therapists. We're trying to give the media some therapy and help it see that there's more good in the world than it likes to let on about.
I like that term a lot. Nice.
Before we close out, where can people follow you, Ione?
Sure. Either me, Ione Butler, Ione Butler, or Uplifting Content. Those are just the handles for pretty much all of our social media.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ione. Thank you, everybody, for listening today to the Optimist Daily Update. We're so glad that you were here. I've really enjoyed this half hour with you, and it's been great sharing this time with Summers. So I'm grateful.
Thank you. It's been lovely, and happy holidays to everybody too.
Yes.
What a brilliant way to start out this Christmas week. And as I always do, because it's my job, I'm going to say thank you everyone for listening, and anyone who has the means, please become an emissary on theoptimistdaily.com. And for just $5 a month, support reader-funded independent journalism. If you need a last-minute holiday gift, if you are like all of us realizing your Amazon gifts are not coming on time, you can certainly gift an Optimist Daily emissary membership to everyone you love and help lift them up as well. Let's keep the Optimist Daily free to all who need it, supported by those who can. Have a great week, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow.